There has been a widely growing recognition in the last 10 years that there is an unprecedented number of women having children after 40. And what is happening is that people are beginning to acknowledge that this is a new demographic, and the long-term implications for later life mothers and their children are not widely known or understood or studied. There's very little research on later parenting. There is a recognition of the risks for later life pregnancies. There's an acknowledgement that fertility becomes more difficult after 40, increasingly so. But there's not a great understanding about this group of women. So what's beginning to happen in a wide range of disciplines, everything from fertility to OBGYNs to child psychologists to people across the board in different disciplines, are beginning to recognize this population and start to look at their needs and look at their long-term implications for their children and for these women as mothers.
I have heard some moms describe the social stigma, and I think in society at large, if we just look at the media, TV, movies, it's all still about young, svelte, young blonde women in their 20s having children and doing everything, having jobs, whatever. And I think older women in general do still have a stigma, and older moms in particular are looked at as doing something wrong and not being, not thinking out what they're doing and not worrying about the children enough with the consequences of all that I've talked about so far and others have talked about that they're going to be having to deal with. So sometimes they get called selfish for having children at an older age. Sometimes they get called thoughtless, or they're just doing things for their own needs and not really thinking of the consequences of it for the children.
So I think that as a society today, we send a very strong message to women that they're expected to be educated and trained and achieve a lot professionally and establish themselves financially before they can start this project of establishing a family. We even send the message that that would be the responsible thing to do because you have to bring a baby into the world when you're ready for it. Ready in terms of your relationship, in terms of your financial stability. But then by the time they get around to it, they're in their late 30s, early 40s, and then we criticize them for postponing this project and for not starting early enough. So I think that the social forces that encourage women on one hand to postpone motherhood, and then on the other hand criticizes them when they do that, are very problematic.
NASA was contemplating who on our planet is capable of the stresses on their bodies of weightlessness. And they experimented with different ages and the genders. And what they found is when they put a 46-year-old woman up into space, they were able to stay up there longer than men, like significantly longer. There was less atrophy of their bodies, less atrophy of their minds and their cognitive abilities, and they came back much more durable, whereas the men would fall apart in outer space. Their bodies couldn't handle it. Their brains would get all soggy and fuzzy. They weren't able to keep up with all the technical stuff that they had to do in outer space. And what they concluded is that middle-aged women are the most robust of the human species. So when I think of older moms, if we think of both cognitive and physical capacities, they probably are actually stronger in the long run to do the job of parenting than younger moms are, or certainly than dads are of any age. And so there's probably some pros to it that we haven't even discovered that could be real beneficial for waiting longer until you have children.
One of the things that really stands out for me when I see older mothers, I think, is patience. It's something that is so lacking in younger parents. But older parents, mothers, they are so patient. So many of them want to do breastfeeding. They want to just provide the right meals for them and whatnot. And how does it happen unless you're patient? And it really, if there's one quality I see clearly that separates, it's patience.
Most of the people I've seen who've chosen to do this are more committed to being a good parent, to doing whatever it takes. They have the resources, and they are willing to do whatever it takes to be a much better parent than they admit they would have been in their 20s.
There's very good data that fertility declines as women get older, and I think not all women are aware of that. And while it's true that the technologies have improved to allow women to have children even when they're older, it's still one of our biggest challenges. So even with the most advanced reproductive technology, there's still a decrease in pregnancy rate as women get older. So I think sometimes when in the media you might see celebrities having children in their 40s and sometimes 50s, what they don't always tell you is in some of those cases, those women have used donor egg, which is an option, but I don't think that women are always aware that that's what's going on, and it might give them false expectations about how easily or hard it might be to get pregnant when they're older.
I think that women are naive about how long it takes to have a baby, and you can hardly blame them. I mean, think about it. From the time a young girl is old enough to have a period and go through puberty and be potentially able to get pregnant, either she or her parents or somebody, counselor, someone is telling them to try not to get pregnant. So most women are taking contraception all of their reproductive years. And then when they stop doing that reproductive protection and they take away the IUD or they take away the birth control pill or whatever, they think it's just going to just like that happen. That may not be the case. It takes time for that to, it takes time for pregnancy to happen.
It is something that has been observed, and the evidence is showing that women in their early 40s and beyond are having more challenges and difficulties conceiving, especially using IVF. The success rates have been fairly low. What my theory is, or what we're seeing from a Chinese medicine perspective, is that we as a people here in North America, at least in Canada and the United States, are aging prematurely. We're aging at an accelerated rate, and there's this biological potential and a chronological age that we have. And right now, the Western medical science is focusing just on the chronological age, which we can't do anything about. How many times the Earth has gone around the sun will not change for a woman. But not all 40-year-old women are equal. And what I see clinically and what I see in some of the data looking at other age-related or age-associated diseases are that based on our diet, based on our lifestyle, based on stress, and even based on our relationships, our connections to our spouses and our community and our families, can affect the overall lifespan of the human being and the health of the human being.
So if a woman does do in vitro fertilization, it's about 85% of the pregnancies are going to happen in the first 2 to 3 tries. It's not something that people should think they have to do 10, 20, 30 times. That's just crazy. And it's a lot of risk and wear and tear on a woman because you've got the medications, you've got a minor procedure, the anesthesia, and all that going on. But most people, it takes place and success takes place in about 2 tries.
When we see couples after they've been to their REIs, the IVF clinics, often they're quite crushed because nobody wants to hear no, right? So nobody wants to be told it's impossible, first of all. And so ethically, these doctors do need to share with patients, the stats show for us that we can't help you. And it would be unethical to take your 10, 15,000 and put you at risk for an IVF knowing that you're probably not going to have a child. So often they'll get the information from their IVF clinic and they'll come to our clinic in tears, and then we're able to review it and give them a little different perspective on it and explain what that means. Because once they hear you have low ovarian reserve or premature ovarian failure, or you have less than 1% chances of conceiving, they don't hear everything. It's kind of like that Charlie Brown cartoon, wah, wah, wah. They don't hear anything anymore from the doctor, and shell shock, and they need time to process it. There is a processing time.
Why are older women having more C-section than younger ones? One, they have more of medical complications. So there are conditions such as hypertension in pregnancy, which may warrant induction of labor. And as you may know, induction of labor does contribute to cesarean section. Now, if Mary, who's 43, have tried 6 months or 2 years to get pregnant, finally pregnant for the first time, finally after finding that Mr. Right, and she's pregnant and she's having these issues, she wants just the right outcome. I think older women or women over 40 particularly should shop for just the right doctor. Why? You're wiser. You are more needy, if I may say. You are, this is the truth. You know what you want. I mean, every woman, middle-aged women I know are very wise. So why settle for less? If you waited all this time to be a parent, you're really going to settle for something less? You should shop for the best.
So I think the problem is that we're looking at this at a very individualistic level. We're criticizing individual women for making individual decisions about motherhood. What we need to do is look at the social, the collective level. What are the cultural and economic forces that shape our society today? And how can we adopt public policies that really open up options for women, that really promote their autonomy? Freedom.
I think the freezing of unfertilized eggs is one of the great advances in the last decade in the fertility world. I think eventually it might become more commonplace. Unfortunately, right now it's still very expensive and not accessible to most women. But as the cost of that goes down, then I would imagine that it would be used more widely.
So if you look at the years 40 to 60, that is the middle. The middle of anything can be the juiciest part. There's a natural tendency in the middle of any process, whether it's the middle of the school year, the middle of climbing across the monkey bars, to turn around, look at how far you've seen, where you're going, to reassess, am I really committed to the direction I'm taking, or should I make another commitment at this time? Nothing wrong with doing that at all. That's what bright people want to do. I don't understand why it should be any different when it comes to parenting than it is with changing careers. We're all living much longer than our predecessors did. We have time to have multiple do-overs. The typical person changes careers at least 4 or 5 times now before they retire. Who says we can't begin a new chapter of being a parent in our middle years?